discussed about working with components. We learned about components. How do we deal with the components? And adding the components by using inline technique and code behind techniques, right? Yep. So I hope everyone practiced this, right? You are clear about these all concepts. Everyone practiced this, are clear about these options. Yes. Right. Okay. Any problems, any issues? Any problems, any issues that you are facing regard this? Right. Every day, I am spending half an hour time after the class related to what issues you are facing and asking any doubts. I'm clarifying these doubts to everyone who raised the hand or sent a message. I don't know from where you are asking for it's not working and I am not responding. And who is that, right? When I ask what is the doubt, do you have any doubt? Some of you people don't respond to that and simply they that say that I am not responding to your doubt. Is that happening? Anybody? Obviously, I will not respond immediately in the Google Classroom when you send a message, right? Because I have continuous classes from morning to evening. Every day after the class is finished, I am spending time in clarifying your doubts and talking to everyone. I don't know where you have sent message. Anybody, somebody has sent a message. Somebody sent a message saying that I am not responding to your doubt. Who is that, right? Is anything happening like that? Let me know about that. No, right. I hope everyone is clear with that, huh? Right? Right. Obviously, after the class is finished, I'm addressing all the issues for the people who are sending, asking for doubts, talking to everyone. I hope many people are even listening to that. Right? Right. Fine. Yeah. See, if you send a message simply in a Google Classroom and say that I want to clarify now itself, it will not happen. After the class is completed, you please be available, any one of you, for your doubts so that I can address your doubt. I can access your machine and see what the problems you are facing. Okay, right. Fine. Let's continue the session. Yeah. Already we have discussed about how do we work with the components. Today, we will see one more option. We learned two techniques, how we can add the components by using inline and the code behind. Fine. Now, one more technique is there which you need to learn. That is, today we will see how we can add components. Today we will see adding the components by using Angular CLI. So Angular CLI commands to add a new component. The basic Angular CLI commands to add a new component. All right. Let's see what are the CLI commands. What is advantage of CLI is CLI is a command line tool that provides options to generate. You can say that not options, actually that provides commands which can generate components, and register in the application. CLI is a command line tool which provides commands which can generate components and register in the application. Actually, CLI have a set of commands for all types of interactions with application. So all type of interactions. And for dealing with component, so the following commands are used. For component, we can use some commands. What are those commands? So are used actually. What are those commands? So the following commands are used. So one is ng generate. So ng generate, actually ng generate component. The purpose of this command is to generate a new component. I will give one simple option. This is generate a new component. Okay. And very important is this command usually adds a component. It will add a component with all the files. Whatever the files are there, with all the files, it will add a component. So you can use several attributes to manage the component creation, manage the component generation. We can use several options. Actually, we can use a shorthand method. Shorthand method is ng. We can use ng, gc. So, and you can define the component name, its name, ng, gc, and name. You can use the component name. That is the shortcut. So that is the shortcut of creating the command. This is a shorthand method of creating the command, generating the component. You have several attributes to manage the component generation. Some important attributes I will tell you today. Others we will learn according to the situation. Let's see what are the important attributes for the commands. So actually, when you are generating the component, some important attributes also you can use. So attributes, let's see. I am creating a simple design. Yeah. And here I am configuring the design. Okay. And here I am configuring the design. Table for that attribute and purpose. Actually, ng, this is ng generate command attribute. ng generate component attribute. Component and hyphen attribute. And its purpose. What is the purpose? I will show you. What are the options we have? Actually, to generate the component and to configure the purpose of for that particular component. First option is we have attribute is hyphen flat is equal to, you can set a Boolean value either true or false. You can set a Boolean value true or false. Actually, flat true or false, it is nothing but it will not generate a folder for your component files. All component files are stored, or you can say are generated into, all component files are generated into app folder. They are generated into app folder. So that is flat true. What is the purpose of flat? So flat is nothing but it will not generate a folder for your component. Actually, you can see. So when we added login, what we done is we created a folder. Whenever a component is generated, it will create a folder. And in the folder, it will keep all the files. If you don't want the folder to be generated and you want to keep everything in app folder with others, then you can just use flat equal to true. So you can use one option. So you can try one option. The option is usually when you are working with CLI commands, always you should know about one option. That is, CLI commands have a dry run. They have a dry run. Dry run is equal to true. You can keep dry run equal to true. What is that dry run? I will show you one point here. Means what is dry run? We will see one point here. Right. So that means hyphen, you can use dry run. So dry run is equal to, you can keep it to true or false. Actually, dry run is nothing but it will not generate, it will not generate the component. It will not generate the component. It will just show the preview of files added, when it is actually generated. That means before generating, we want to know what is going to be generated. Then we can better use first dry run. That means I will show you. Observe carefully here. Whenever you want to run the commands, remember this point also. So I will add here that point. CLI commands are executed for project in app folder, executed in project in app folder. CLI commands are executed for project in app folder through a terminal. Through terminal, it is generated. That means what you have to do is open this app folder in terminal. Right click on that app folder and select open in integrated terminal. Open in integrated terminal. It will open in an integrated terminal here. This is app folder. Make sure that your project related all the commands you are running in this folder, not in workspace. So many times people come with a complaint that, sir, I am running the command, it is not working. First, you need to verify in which location you are running that command, whether you are in the correct location or not. Otherwise, these commands will not work. Sometimes that issue you will face. Generally at learning level, you will forget about the folder where you exactly have to run that. Then if you run in a different location, they will not work. So for that, we need to first understand where to run this command. You cannot run the command in workspace directly. You have to run the command in app folder of that particular project. And here, see what I am doing. ng generate component and the component name. Component name I given as register. Component name as register. Make sure that there is no register already here. Okay, ng generate component register. Actually, what it will do is, it will generate a component for you. No, I don't want to generate a component. Before generating the component, I want to verify what files it is going to generate for us, where it is going to create. I need to just see the preview first, because a developer, after generating, if he thinks that some files are unnecessary, then he will go there, delete that file, again change the. This is all not good. So as a developer, if you are not sure what it is going to generate for you, first see the preview, then observe what it is going to generate, then really generate. So if you want to see a preview without really generating, then you can use --, dry run equal to true. Dry run equal to true. If you use dry run equal to true for any command, it will not actually affect that in your project. It will just show the preview. I will hit enter now. You can see that this dry run, remember, these commands are case sensitive. Capitalization matters. You have to write the commands exactly how I defined with the capitalization. So dry run equal to true. And see here, it says that, see, it is generating component HTML file, component spec file, component TS file, component CSS file. And another important point here, dry run flag means no changes were made. No changes were made means it will not affect your project. You see here, when we go to the components here, app, in app, there is no register created here. Now, some people are asking question, sir, which one is used in real time? Now, Angular people have given several facilities. Now, what do you think? Some are for part-time, some are for real time, some are for time pass. Angular people, if they have provided any specific option, what do you think? They have provided all the facilities. That means, according to you, what do you think? Why they have provided so many facilities? Because some people asking question here, which one is used in real time? Now, can you tell me which one is used in real time? Guess. What do you guess? Which one is used in real time? Any idea? Right? Sensibly, any developer who knows that software has provided so many facilities means as per the situation, as per the requirement, you can use which one suits for your kind of situation. Am I right? Right? Otherwise, any software in the world is not designed for learning. Actually, every software is designed for real-time development only. Right? Every software is designed for real-time development. Whatever option they release, that means they have a real-time requirement for that. That is the reason they have designed it. Nobody will design like, this is for learning, so you just learn it but don't use it. It is not like that. Right? Every option have a different situation that demands. It's important for a developer to understand the situation. So here, but this question is really need to be understood by people, because actually, why you added manually if you can add through a command easily? Can you tell me? Manually adding looks little bit difficult, na? If you have a command, then why you have added manually? Can anyone tell? If command feels easy, then why you have added manually? Anyone can guess an answer for this? Because it is reasonable to understand. Right. Yeah. Yes, very good. Because, yes. Actually, if you run through command, what will happen is, it will generate everything by default according to what is asked for it. It will generate everything for you. Am I right? It will generate everything for a component that is for that. But if it generates everything, but currently our situation doesn't needs everything, it needs only few options, then generating through command, after generating, going there and removing the unnecessary things will be a risky one. Am I right? Am I right? That is the reason is we add manually so that we can add only what is necessary. So, and we can eliminate a lot of, because any component that you generated through these commands, they will automatically generate lot of dependencies, lot of coding, and they will add into your library, which will be heavy on application every time. That's the reason. If you are going to utilize all of that, then better add in that way. If you are not going to utilize, then better go with the shortcut, manually adding everything. I hope everyone understood that, right? Yeah. So that means, because when you generate through template commands, lot of problems will come, because problems is nothing but unnecessary logic is generated, which is not required for us. I will show you. So in different points, we will see now actually. So I hope two commands are clear. One is dry run. Flat means, observe carefully, I will run this command, ng generate component register dry run equal to true. Hit enter. It is creating. It is actually showing. Observe carefully. In app folder, it is generating a separate folder called register. In that folder, it is keeping all these files. In that folder, it is keeping all the files. So that is the key point you need to observe. So that means it is creating a separate folder. It is creating a separate folder for that register. Okay. I don't want to create a folder directly. I want to add in app folder. Then what we have to do is ng generate component. This is shortcut nggc. That is the shortcut. Ng generate component, and component name is register. And two attributes I am adding here. Hyphen flat is equal to true. Flat is equal to true. And hyphen here I am adding dry run also equal to true. That means don't create it, just to show me what you are going to do. And here I am adding flat equal to true. So flat equal to true, in that case, enter. See what happens now. It will generate a component for you. And observe carefully. So in app, directly register.html file is added. Directly component.spec file is added. Directly component.ts file is added. Directly this CSS is added. And one more point, it is registering your component inside app module.ts. That's good. That means you don't need to manually register it. It is automatically registering the component. It is automatically registering the components. That's good. And it is happening in both situations actually. Now only the point is flat true means it will not create a folder for you. So that is what actually the intention of flat true. It will not generate a folder for your component files. All component files are generated into app folder. Dry run means it will not actually generate the component. It will not actually generate the component. It will just the preview of the files added when it is really generated. When it is really generated. That is what actually these two commands. One is dry run, another one is flat. Okay. Next important, another attribute is hyphen inline style is equal to, so you can set it to true or false. Inline style equal to true or false. Inline style equal to true or false means it will generate a component and it will not generate a separate style sheet. So it will not generate a separate style sheet. The styles are maintained in a .ts file. In .ts file, we can maintain the styles. It will do that. It will not generate a separate style sheet. It will not generate a separate style sheet. So let's observe this now. Let's go to the command. In the command here, I'm generating ng generate command. We have registered hyphen hyphen. I'm using, so inline style is equal to true, and hyphen hyphen dry run is also true. That means don't create it, just show me what you will do. Then hit enter, and you can see that this time inline style equal to true. Then observe carefully. So here it generated a component HTML file. It generated a component spec file. It generated a TS file, but CSS file is not generated. Why CSS file is not generated? Because you said that I will write CSS inline. Then it will not generate a CSS file for you. It will just create a component without the CSS file that you can define by using inline style. Similarly, you can use another option. Hyphen hyphen inline template equal to true. You can use true or false. Inline template equal to true. That means it will not generate a separate HTML file. Generate a HTML file. The markup is maintained. The markup is maintained in .ts file. In TS file only the markup is maintained. That means for this, what it will use above, it will use the option called styles URL. So here styles, it will use styles. And here what it will use? It will use template. It will use the template. It will not use template URL. It will not use styles URL. Just it will use these options in the TS file. That means inline template equal to true means it is not going to generate the HTML file. Once observe here. Let's say inline template equal to true. Inline template equal to true, and hit enter. Dry run again. This time it is not going to generate the HTML file. You can observe only spec file, TS file, CSS file is generated. So that means it is not going to generate the HTML file. So HTML file is not generated. Only the TS file and CSS files are generated. If you don't want, so both, you can give both combination commands. If you want to skip the testing files, then you can use here skip tests. So you can set it to true or false. That means it will not generate a separate spec.ts file. That means test file. It will not generate test file. So it will generate only the HTML file. It will generate only the CSS file. It will not generate the spec file. So that is skip test. You can set it to true or false. So these are all the basic options which are required for generating component. So that means here I am using that option also. So skip test. I am using here skip test. And you can see I run this, and this time you can observe that It is not, so it is not generating a spec file. It is generating all others, right? It is not generating a spec file. Several more options are there, which are not necessary for this situation. As of now, these are enough. Later, you will learn routing, modules, and change detection like advanced attributes, which you can use for generating the components, which we can technically use for generating the components. So initially, you need to understand these commands. So let's create that component real and see. So what I'm doing now, so here I'm configuring the command. Here I'm configuring the command. Yeah, you can use all together. That's what I showed you, right? I am using hyphen hyphen. I said skip test equal to true, hyphen hyphen inline equal to true, right? You can define all step by step. And the dry run also I added. Every attribute is added. Every attribute is added just by using a space, right? Together you can generate all of them, right? So you can generate all of them and you can use the commands together. So just you need to separate all the commands and those options with a space. For every option there should be space. Already I have used it here now. You can see I am writing inline template equal to true, hyphen hyphen dry run equal to true. I can add here hyphen hyphen skip test equal to true. You can all combine together and generate them, right? So you can use a combination, right? You can use a combination of multiple. Okay. Now let's really generate a component. To really generate a component, you just ignore the dry run. I will do one thing. Just I will add ng generate component register component, and here I am using skip test. And remember one point is, so if you are not defining, so here one important option is by default the value for all boolean attributes. That means you don't mention true or false. You don't mention true or false. By default, it is true. If you don't mention true or false, by default, it will be true. That means if I say simply here, skip test, I'm not saying equal to true. I'm just saying skip test. That means it will generate a component and will skip test and hit enter. And you can see that it is generating the folder for us. And you can see it is maintaining a separate folder for us. You see left side in our project. So register component is actually generated. Register component is actually component. This register component, you can observe it is created with all the three files here clearly. HTML register component.ts, and once click inside it, and you can see that at the same time it is importing so many things which are not necessary for that situation. And you can see all the component selector, template URL, everything is configured for you. And actually, so here you can observe in the logic here, it is implementing it. As of now, we don't need that. Later, we will use them and we will understand what is on in it and all. As of now, I don't need that. And as of now, I don't need these. These are not required. And I don't need to import any on init in general. I need to correct all these. Otherwise, unnecessarily, they are loaded and they are configured for you even when you are not utilizing them. And go to the HTML. HTML, it is saying register works. Go to CSS. CSS is empty. Nothing is. That means what? And one interesting part is you go to appmodule.ts. The register component is already registered here. So that means it will generate a component for you and it will register everything for you. It will technically register everything for you. That makes a sense. That means, but this is not required for every situation. So that's the reason. And not only that, sometimes these days we are in the cloud system. When you are in the cloud system, when you are working in the cloud-based environment, many times you know that you don't use any software like Visual Studio Code downloaded. You directly use the softwares online in a browser. And sometimes you need to manage your projects directly without using any editor. That means you just open the repository, go to that location and add some more files, extend its functionality. You don't really have a editor, you don't really have a command line terminal to run those commands. That's the reason you need to know how to add them manually, how to configure them manually. So in real world development process, every time you will not get a situation that you will be given with an editor and you are asked to design in the editor. You need to edit or modify live in the cloud environment where they will not have the complete scenario in the same way how you are having in your machine. In that case, you need to know how to manually add them, manually register them, manually configure them and use them. So this is the basic, just only two changes we need to do. To make this register component work, what we have to do is, in the Bootstrap, we need to keep this register component. And in the index HTML page, we need to keep here register, app register. We need to add this app register. That means this register component is ready. Let's start the application. So I will take a new terminal. This time I have to start from the project location. That means workspace. ng serve -- project is equal to Amazon. This will compile your project. You have to open in a browser. If you use --o or you say --open, then what it will do is it will compile your project and it will launch in the browser. So this, if you don't use open, then it will just compile and ready. It is listening on specific port number. You have to run that port number. You have to configure and run that port number, right? That means you have to open a browser and do that. If I'm using --open directly here, then what it will do is it will compile, it will run. It will compile, it will run, and it will directly launch that in a browser. It will open the browser and it will launch that in the browser. So example, so how do we generate a command? What you have to do is, first point, right click on app folder, then select the option open in integrated terminal. That means this path will open in an integrated terminal. So in that app folder, so that means so much path will be there. C:// and so much path will be there. In that app folder, you have to run that command. What is the command? ng generate component and component -- skip test. Just skip test. So skip test, that means it will keep that skip test. You can use all the commands. That means all other attributes you can do that. And I have given the list of attributes above, and you can try those attributes. There is no order dependency in attributes. All the attributes in a one line. Which attribute is first, which attribute is second later. But this command is standard. The syntax is standard. The command syntax is standard. Attributes, there is no order. And you see here, interestingly, it is working directly. I am not opening any browser manually. What it has done, it has compiled successfully and launching a browser. In that, it is opening this particular location automatically for us. That means it is launching and it is opening particularly here. So this is so automatically generated. Now, which one to use according to the situation, according to the requirements. So you need to use whatever you need for that requirement. So suppose I don't want separate style sheet, I don't want separate CSS, you can generate inline. So that means you can generate so the component with an inline technique. We can generate component with an inline technique. Just what we have to do is we need to use the combination of all this. Remember, you can actually use all these commands. You can so one by one, that means side by side without any order dependency. And several more options are there. So we have just learned few options which are regularly required for this particular situation. Later, you are going to understand about other attributes. You can generate interfaces, you can generate modules, everything you can do by using this inline, this CLI technique. Even you can create enums and alls, right? Initially for component, this is the hierarchy. Now it is going to generate. You need to set up and you have to run. And to run in a separate run and open, you here, suppose that means here one more option is to run and to run in browser directly after compiling. So you can use this command. You can use the command. What is the command to be used here? Here we have to use in the workspace. So ng server hyphen project is Amazon project is equal to Amazon, and here you have to give hyphen open. That is how generally we create. Generally we run. It will directly compile and it will open in the browser. Various methods of generation. This is one technique of defining and working with the component. Now, next important part here, once you know how the component is generated, how the component is created, later, so to understand how to handle interaction in this component. Remember, a component use another component inside. Component can be nested. Component can transport data from one component to another. So much work is there here. But the basic point, what you have to know here is now, and very important is in Angular, we have to learn about, after understanding how do we generate the component, we need to learn about very important topic, that is data binding. Understand data binding. In order to understand, technically data binding is nothing but data binding is a technique that allows the logic to bind the data with the view UI. For that, actually, to understand this data binding, you need to first understand about some important software architectural patterns used by Angular. Software architectural patterns used by Angular. Primarily, Angular uses the software architectural patterns. Two important software architectural patterns are there which Angular uses. So one is Angular primarily uses MVC. So that is Model View Controller, and MVVM. So that is Model View Model. These are the two important frameworks. So these two important architectural patterns. Architectural patterns or frameworks, both are similar to understand. So I will tell you the point about them. Actually, in order to understand these two patterns, first you need to know a simple overview about what is the key concept here. And Angular implicitly uses these two. Internally, it uses these two. That's the reason we should be aware of how these patterns work. Actually, Angular software architectural patterns used by Angular clients because client side, because these patterns are used server side also. Server side. So what is difference between these patterns working in client side and working in server side? What is difference between these two? You need to clearly understand the difference. That means server side, what will happen? Client side, what will happen, right? So that means what is the scenario for these patterns? Actually, so if anyone asks what is MVC or what is MEVM, then if anyone asks the question like first, so what is MVC? That is the first question. And the answer for this is MVC is actually, MVC is an software architectural pattern. Architectural pattern. Immediately, many people, MVC is a software. Many people ask a question, sir, what is software architectural pattern? What is software architectural pattern? Many people ask this question, sir, what is software architectural pattern? Then actually any developer will give an answer like it is similar to a design pattern, design pattern, but have a broader scope, broader scope. That is the answer actually. Now immediately many people ask a question, sir, what is a design pattern? What is a design pattern? Because in order to understand MVC, what is this software architectural pattern means, you need to understand from the concept of design pattern. I will not go any in-depth about design patterns here. I will just give you an overview about what is a design pattern, what is an architectural pattern, and how these patterns work in our Angular application. That means if you know what is a design pattern and if you know what is an architectural pattern, understand what is MVC. And once you know MVC and how it works, you can implement it in your Angular application. Angular application implicitly uses this framework. So the advantage of this is so many. We will discuss about those features. So to understand MVC, you need to first understand about design pattern. Actually, design patterns means a simple overview about what is a design pattern actually. Design patterns are the solution for software design problems, are the solution for software design problems that a developer faces in real world application development. In a real world application development. Actually, so much is there about design patterns. Yes. So technically, design pattern are the solution for software design problems. Actually, design patterns, they are about creating objects. They are about creating objects, designing of classes. They are about creating objects, designing of classes, and handling communication. I think you know that. So the software, the 23, am I right? 23, gang of 4, am I right? Gang of 4 patterns. as foundation for all other patterns, other patterns. So which are categorized into three groups, which are categorized into three groups. We have creational patterns. We have structural patterns, and behavioral patterns. Creational patterns, structural patterns, and behavioral patterns. These are the three kinds of patterns. So these are all the design patterns. Yes, good. Generally, creational patterns deal with instantiation, creating of objects, with designing of entities and relationship. And behavioral patterns deal with communication. It's a very big concept. So points, but you should know that in software development, everywhere there is a design pattern. Everything is bound to design pattern. So everything you design is a design pattern. Already we discussed it, if you remembered. So I told you, like for in is not loop. It is an iterator. Am I right? We discussed about that. For in is not a loop, it is an iterator. And iterator is a software design pattern. Actually, iterator pattern is nothing but it allows to access the elements from a collection in sequential order. If the elements in a collection are accessed in a sequential order, without any condition, without any iteration, without any initialization, so then we call this as an iterator. And foreign is not a looping, is an iterator. Iterator is a software design pattern. I hope many of the software design patterns you design patterns. But important, you should know that design patterns are responsible for building application. Design patterns are responsible for building application. We need more than this. Not only just building application, we want someone who can control the application flow. So design patterns are about creating objects, designing classes, handling communication. That means by using design patterns, you can build application. After building the application, you need to control the application flow. And that is managed by using architectural patterns. That means we call them as software architectural patterns. So software architectural patterns, so architecture, right? Software patterns. Software architectural patterns are same like design patterns, but they have a broader scope. Responsible for two things. They are responsible for building the application as well as control the application flow. Control the application. Technically, you call this as a framework. Framework is responsible for two things. It is responsible for building the application, and software architectural patterns are responsible for two things. They can control the application flow and they can build the application. They provide library for building application and they can control the application flow. And MVC, MVVM, this comes under the category of architectural patterns. So they are involved in two options, building the application and controlling the application flow. So how understand two frameworks now? One is MVC, another one is MVVM. So first we are going to discuss about what is MVC and how it works. And we will see how it is used in our Angular application. So this is client-side MVC, working with that MVC. So that obviously we will see in our next session. Okay, I hope you are clear with these basic things. And in the next session, we are going very much in depth about the concept now. We are going to understand what is this MVC, how data binding works, and how to implement this framework client side, how it works client side. These are important in Angular, right? We will discuss all this in the next session, right?